The 24th of May, 2022. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Like my official YouTube video, and if you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. And go to my website, www.ladydorybell.com, also known as www.susanmeeling.com. I figured I'd change it up a bit just to keep you on your toes. So, I have dealt with a few different situations to the point that you can go to my website, most commonly known as www.susanmeeling.com, and you can see what I've been working on, especially in regards to my books as well as my journal blog, The Ornery PSA. So many years ago, not all that many though, I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I grew up going around the tri-state area. That's where I was raised. And in Old Tenet Presbyterian Church, where I'm a confirmed member of, after the year of 1997 to be specific, but during the time frame of attending Old Tenet Presbyterian Church, it was known that I'm the original baby Jesus Christ, as well as the fact that the majority of church plays I had been the lead or the co-lead. And I didn't really want to be involved with certain things. I was more akin to the choir or handbells, chimes, where I could actually fit in and blend in, and everybody having their own aspect of. Though I have had a few solos. I haven't had any duets. I may have had one or two duets regarding choir, though I dealt with that. And while some people might consider that as ideal, well, there are those who understand pop culture references and people who know how they are when it comes to pop culture references. And so I dealt with, in regards of those who have been actors and actresses, most specifically, I dealt with that as a child. And so there were the different individuals in Sunday school that I got to deal with on a continuous basis. So those who have been actors and actresses know how that actually is regarding that. Whether you're involved with Broadway or whether you have been in whatever movie or television show, as far as that's concerned. Or maybe if you've been in singing or rapping, what have you, you have that idea of the constant. Though in comparison, I had to go to Sunday school every Sunday, and that's what I dealt with. So for those who don't know, well, you know how you are when it comes to that. Those who have been, I learned the term of body doubles or whatever in comparison. You have the knowledge of how you are. And those who have been understudies, you know how you are. And in reference to individuals as far as performances and those factors, you know how you are, including the after time frames. And so, while some people might not think about that, that's the facts. And so while a director or producer might not see that, that's the facts as to what's been dealt with, especially since I was a child. So then, in the time frame of going to Marlboro Middle School, I was capable to get into track and field, which I enjoyed. Similarly to at St. John Vianney High School, I had been a ringer. It was called a floater, but I was a ringer. In Marlboro Middle School, we used that term, whereas in St. John Vianney High School, we use the term a floater. So in Marlboro Middle School, I usually did the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, the 400-meter dash, and long jump. Kind of ish into shot put, kind of ish into discus. St. John Vianney High School, however, it was the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, the 110 hurdles, the 400-meter dash, the 410 hurdles, the 400-meter relay, the 410-meter relay, long jump, high jump was my normal, and then shot put and discus. That's where I was the ringer or floater in that reference. And so that was something I could enjoy because, okay, fine, I still earn my own, and if it assists, great. But it's a team effort in comparison to just one or two things. And while others involved in productions, they know that there are whichever aspects of in those references. And yet, whatever their opinions are regarding their own performance aspects in comparison to whatever the director and or producer see for that reference point. And so in St. John Vianney High School, I had wanted to go on the wrestling team. I was a tomboy as a child, and I wanted to do something different. And I had earned second and third place in sparring and form in the international competition for Taekwondo, which obviously I know there is a massively huge difference between Taekwondo and wrestling. However, I have a buck gum and a buck poo. And I was raised learning how to, I'll say, defend myself. I'll leave it at that. And so I figured I actually could, though I'm short, I'm only 5'4", and at that time I barely was 100 pounds, so instead my biological mother said, well, why don't you go and be in the play? You know, nothing new. Except for the fact that I didn't get a lead part. I actually was excited about that. I was actually really excited. I should clarify. I technically got the part, except I wouldn't do certain things to have the part. And so, because I wouldn't do certain things to have the part, I was just one of the rest of the individuals, which was perfectly fine with me. I could sing the song, I could do whatever, and except for the fact that I had a barely there A cup. I had the song and the irony of that actual dance 10, looks 3, that particular song in a Catholic high school, mind you. And so, so I also knew that I didn't want to tell my biological father. I kind of had this weird sensation that if my biological father had been informed that my role was going to be that when I was 13 years old, he probably would do exactly what he did, only more in comparison. So, for those who don't know, just literally you can look up the lyrics for Dance 10, Looks 3. And I didn't have, and there is the irony, in regards of, nonetheless, so I had declined that particular role because the irony was I was going to have to wear whatever, and it just didn't work out. I wasn't willing to. So it went to another female, and I was fine with that. because I really didn't want to sing that song in front of my biological father, who was a trustee at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. On top of that, those who have met my biological father, then there's that. And so, in addition to that, then I'd have to deal with my biological mother, who had already freaked out about pictures that I had drawn. And then there's my biological sister, which then there's that. And so I was perfectly content with just the one singular sensation, every little step she takes. Do-do-do-do-do-do. One thrilling combination, every move that she makes. One smile and suddenly nobody else will do. So anyway, so it was as it was. However, after the play and it was put into writing as far as the school newspaper, well, for once, I didn't have to deal with that. Unfortunately, I did prepare any of the leads. I did what I could and let them know what certain factors were essentially regarding, and very few had really paid attention. And then yet, those who remember Cafeteria, I think one of the females' names was Molly, and which I had told her, oh, I actually have an aquarium with a bunch of mollies in them. And she didn't take that as I had intended it in comparison. So this other female, she had, I can't remember her name, she had really been in the Broadway watching scene, and she had a birthday party that she was going to go to the Tony Awards, and a bunch of people were going to go with, and it was as it was, and it was during the year that I was going through confirmation class. And I just didn't have any inclination, so it was one of those, she tried doing the, oh, well, we're gonna go, and she had her little compact makeup, and she said, oh, we're going to go and do this, and then we're gonna go here, and whatever. And, okay, well, cool. You should probably be careful of this street and this intersection and this street and this intersection if this is where I think that one's going to be. And I go over a bunch of details and, no, we'll be fine. I have this. And it's like, yeah, except I know those streets. So, is what it is. But, what do I know? Oh, well, if you actually know anything about New York City, This was in high school freshman year, by the way, and I got called a snob in the year of 2010 and 2011 in comparison to literally, this was my high school. No, Susan, if you actually knew anything about Broadway is so enriching for so many individuals. If you actually had any idea of what class is. That was my high school. Yeah. And those who went to St. John Vianney High School know exactly what I'm talking about. I might not remember her, or I don't remember her name, and yet there are those who do. And they'd be capable to say whether or not that was pretty much on point. And, because for those who didn't know, so then there was the Broadway production of A Chorus Line. So at cafeteria time after that, well, I had been to that, and in comparison to Broadway, it is a high school production after all. For those who would know. Hypothetically, as to how possibly accurate and completely on the mark that could actually be in some sort of a way. Teeny tiny bit. In something that maybe, I don't want to assume, I could have it could be a false memory, or it could be 100% on the point. And so it depends on, nonetheless. So that's the way I remember it, and it is what it is. And then there was a female in the production that there was a situation, massively huge misunderstanding, and this particular female, and then I can't believe that there were actually, and this female talking smack about other females' physical bodies. I couldn't, it was I came unglued in that cafeteria, for those who remember that particular day. Though the unglue aspect, it was more along the lines of, you do know, out of curiosity, do you know what size that female wears? And, she went, before you answer that, do you have a similar size before you continue with that particular commentary? Because if you are going to actually utilize those words in reference to, you are literally looking in the mirror. So maybe instead of looking at that compact mirror, maybe you need to think about a larger size mirror to actually pay attention before you make a comment about another female in that capacity. And those who know, her lipstick broke. Because it literally looked like a nail because of how she would do it. So she had used it in a specific way, and it literally had the specific curve, for those who know exactly who I am referring to. Again, I can't remember her name, but it is what it is. So time went on. We did, and there were issues after that. Where that just so happened to stem from, mainly it had to do, in my opinion, with a chorus line, officially by technicalities, which portion of it was as it was. And so, I started dealing with certain things. So there was a blonde female who, ironically, after my grandma Gavin's graduation, had talked about certain things. So I had asked how to get it, so that way I could actually know what my biological mother's half-sister's daughter was talking about, because I had no idea what it was. And since I didn't smoke any of it, and they had this dime bag thing, it was, okay, well, I know people in St. John Vianney High School, I'll just go ask. And so I asked, and then I got whatever, and then I got caught with it by my biological father, because that particular day, he decided to go through my track bag. I didn't even get to take a look at it, and that day, he goes through it, and it's like, you have got to be kidding me. So then I dealt with what I dealt with and went through that whole thing, and it's like, well, I asked as far as it was concerned. It was my money anyway, so I was doing what I wanted to do. And I went and I did. I explained the situation as far as the seminary, pun intended, I guess, college, as far as Grandma Gavin was concerned, I guess pun intended, because I know my biological father knows about my biological mother's sister and her daughter, and it is what it is as far as that's concerned, as far as the irony of the train track area. And so I'm just going to leave it at that regarding, because I know my biological father knows which particular biological mother's sister, because she only has one daughter, so it's not rocket science for that particular factor when there's only two sisters to my biological mother for that reference point. So, it is what it is. And so that I know of. Anyway, so it is what it is. And so I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to just look at it. And since I like to garden, it is what it is. I didn't even get to look at it. I literally got in the house and they, let me see that bag, something smells funny. Shit, damn it, I can't even. And so, where did you get this? At school. And so, well, why did you get it at school? Because, and before I could answer, that was it. So I got in trouble for going to look. Why did I turn down the role in reference to Dance 10 Looks 3? That's one example for a reason. And so, that was, I didn't even get to do anything. That's the kicker. I didn't get to do anything at all, which is the irony of ironies to so many other situations in my life. So, just pointing that out. So, fast forward to 1998, from 1996 by technicalities for the play, but 1997 after having graduated and dealt with all that stuff as far as school was concerned. So I got into an actual fight in, I think it was 1998, regarding Tony Ann and Michelle and Teresa and Christy and Nick. And yes, Nick is a male. And so I was on the bus. It was after, so we had already been in track. Tony Ann and I had been in track. And I don't remember if Jen was in track, but I know Michelle was in basketball. And Jen, Tony Ann's friend, this was obviously after the movie Titanic. I don't know how anybody found that movie romantic in the slightest, but whatever as far as that's concerned. To this day, I still don't understand how that was a romantic, and I wanted to see Biodome, which, I actually did finally get to see Biodome, and despite certain things, it technically would be far more romantic as far as Biodome is concerned, in my particular opinion, despite certain ironies. In quite a few different ways. Anyway, by technicalities, I'd consider Biodome a romantic comedy that's twisted in all sorts of ways, though still romantic nonetheless, because, I'm about life. And so, and not that, Titanic, I don't know how people didn't know how that movie was gonna go at all. Whatsoever. It was kind of like a fast forward to the after 2000 time frame, and my now dead ex-husband wanted to see Pearl Harbor. I was like, and I really didn't want to see it. I did not want to see Pearl Harbor at all. And so, because I found out that it was a romance, so the only thought I had was like Titanic, and it's like, no, that's not the type of romance I'm interested in. No, and though I suppose a bit of an irony in other capacities, nonetheless, it wasn't as bad as Titanic. I mean, by technicalities, it wasn't as bad. It still was as it was. But fine, it worked out. What people in Hollywood consider as romance, I don't know. That's some twisted stuff right there. And I took gymnastics and stuff, so just saying. And I've done yoga, so I know about twisted. I also like pretzels and irony. Nonetheless, seriously, and I know about twisted because I wear corsets. So anybody who's ever, if you haven't worn a corset, females most specifically, when you wrap a present and you do the little the scissor thing with the ribbon and you get the little curly Q thing? after you wear a corset a certain amount of times, that's what happens to the string. Okay? Because you're literally putting it through a metal grommet. And so that's how that goes. And it gets really annoying because then it fits differently and you have to deal with it. It's much more difficult than it might look. And so anyway, which I know that there have to be some drag queens who know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to that most specifically. And that's also why I don't like underbust corsets and I only like overbust corsets. Because it's much easier to deal with for those who understand that in comparison to those underbust corsets. It's a personal preference. And so, anyway, I also have the spiral steel boning only. 8 millimeters preference with the 10 millimeter flat boning. I'm very particular about my corsets. I cannot be the only one, and I'm a biological female. Okay, so just for clarifications, I was wearing corsets before ever learning about RuPaul's Drag Race. Okay, I was doing it. I don't even know if it was around at the time. Maybe it was. Nonetheless, I was wearing corsets because I enjoy them, and so I actually dated a guy who tried to tell me he couldn't have a girlfriend who wore corsets. And I was like, that's fine. And the following week, he didn't have to worry about that. And, you know, that was back in 2004. So, you know, there's that. This is 2022. So... Nonetheless, the time went, so back to 1998, after the situations regarding the play and what I wasn't willing to be a part of afterwards, I wasn't willing to go and try out the second year when I was there. And so there were certain issues, and I was in winter track instead of in the play. And so there were those factors as far as, it's literally called drama. And so then fast forward to summer or spring track, and Tony Ann and I, we got along well. We didn't have any until it came around that people knew that I had been in a bunch of plays at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. I was going to St. John Vianney High School. You know, a Catholic parochial high school. In the 1990s. Yeah. My biological mother thought all churches were the same. She also thought that going to St. John Vianney High School was the same as going to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. Her reasoning was because they both have uniforms. She also thought that the Gremlin car was the precursor to the Mustang. So I'll leave it at that for this particular lecture. Then she tried to claim it was the precursor to the Mach. Then the precursor, she was trying very, very much. I don't know what she was trying, but she was trying. I don't know what she was trying though, so that was that. And so it was as it was. So Tony Ann and I, we had gotten along. We didn't have any issues until it was found out. And in reference to if you actually knew anything about it. So then that was brought up again. And because I had been asked my opinion by that particular female. And so for those who have known me in person, face to face in person, wherever you have known me in person, face to face in person, this was 1998 and I was in New Jersey. So if you knew me in Illinois and you asked my opinion, remember I was in Illinois compared to being in New Jersey. And if I met you in Texas, remember, you wanted to know what I was like before my head injury. And it was as it was. But remember, in Texas, you had problems with my words. And I was older and a mom. So, I don't know why, I told these people in Texas, I don't know why you'd want to know that. I don't know why. But if you need a reference point, I don't recommend it, but if you've ever seen Mike pissed off, well, that's like when I was depending. I did spend a lot of time with him, so I learned directly from that. I don't know why anybody really wanted to know what that was. It seemed pretty simple, but anyway, it did. It seemed so simple to understand, and yet it was what it was. And so Tony Ann and I, we started having issues, but it wasn't issues between Tony Ann and I. It was Jen. This is like such girl crap. Anyway, Jen had the thing in reference to Tony Ann's boyfriend at the time, and, designated decoy situations. So she'd bring up certain things in reference to me. It was known I couldn't date until I turned 16 years old. And so instead, there were those males, for those who know New Jersey teenage males for that particular reference. And so that went the way it did, and so, it was as it was. And then on the bus ride one day, there was the situation where Jen had told Tony Ann that I had waved at her boyfriend, who I can't remember what his name is. And then there was the New Jersey teenage group of teenagers. And so then after a certain point, to make an attempt to not stir up drama, I just pointed out the truth, because Tony Ann was like, well, why would it? Because it went from, you totally are trying to be with my boyfriend and da-da-da-da. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You totally, he's this, and he's this, and he's this, and he's this, and he's this. But he's your boyfriend, and I'm not interested in that. No, he's totally this, and what are you saying that he, and then it switched to what? What, he's not good enough for you now? What's he not good enough for? What? I can't date. Well, that doesn't stop, and then all this other stuff. It's like, Jen said this and Jen said that. It's like, yeah. So then as we got closer to Tennant Road, well, you what? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? Da-da-da. He has pimples. Because what teenager in high school hasn't dealt with pimples? Oh yeah? Well, you better take that back. He has man face or something like that. And all this other stuff. And then something along the lines of, because he was taller than me, he has boogers. And you better take that back. And it's like, do with this? And then then I just couldn't take it anymore because I had already been dealing with it for as long as it was. And so from Monica's house on Church Road to the time the bus stopped, and then I got off the bus. and then the next Monday at school, because it was on a Friday this occurred, so anybody who's ever been in high school and that went that way. And so by Monday, I had been in the principal's office because, and before I had been in the principal's office, I was in homeroom class. So there were a bunch of people that were like, I heard that you, and it's like, what? Thanks for letting me know about stuff I didn't know about myself. But no, that's not what happened. And so I went to clarify it, and then I got called, and ooh, Susan got called on the PA system. Ooh, before the announcements began. Ooh, because anybody who's been in high school, great. And my name was the only name that was called because everybody else had their mom and or dad because it was a Catholic high school. And I was going to Old Tennant Presbyterian Church. And so when I walked in and saw everybody else's parents there, I was like, what's going on? And the dean tried to say, well, it does. I booked it out of that room, ran to the payphone, called Mike at the house. Because I was like, no, I'm not being blamed for this because I didn't do anything wrong. Because it was known, so for the clarifications before I go there, so my biological mother just so happened to have been at the house when I got back, and anybody who's met Anna. And so the one day that we had that month to wear dress-down clothes in comparison to uniforms, well, I felt a brief breeze, and I was wearing a turtleneck, which had gotten ripped, and so I had to put my backpack up higher to try to hide this one little 3-inch tear, and almost got all the way halfway up the stairs before Anna, what is happening to your shirt that I paid for? And so turned around, and I had no idea that my shirt looked like a tie-dye. It was a white shirt or a cream colored shirt, ribbed. And so I didn't know that my knuckles had anything on them. I also did not know my shirt pretty much, and so anybody who's met Anna when she's upset, and so and this was in New Jersey in comparison to whatever state you knew her in, and so yeah, it was good. So, then Mike got in the house after whatever point, and he was like, why? Because Anna was crying, so anybody's who's ever seen that. And then Mike's only questions were, well, what happened? Well, no. Did you get in a fight? Yes. Did you win? And so at this, I still hadn't gotten to wash my hands at this point. My shirt was essentially this color, and then here is where the splotches of white were. And I think I did. I'm fairly certain that's how that goes. And so then I was told to go clean up. Mind you, I had sat in the kitchen for 3.5 hours. Oh, great. Awesome. So awesome. All right then. So it was as it was. That fast forward to Monday, and so got to the phone, called Mike, which I hadn't brought up anything that was going on at the time because, no, because I grew up in a house with him. And so I knew how that went. And since I was already dealing with the needless problems from my biological sister, which I wouldn't be surprised in those references, it's one of those, no, I know better. I know better. You don't, no, I will only call in if I have to. Because only if I have to. Because, because then I deal with that at school afterwards as well. So, nope, no. So he came in and it went the way it did, as I have discussed about and written about, and finding a silver lining and finding the silver lining, which you can find on my website, www.susanmealing.com, also known as www.ladydorybell.com. And so in those particular situations, the facts of how many parents were there compared to Mike, I was not calling Anna at all because of obvious reasons in that reference. Obviously. And so when as it did, then I had to deal with my biological sister being the way she was, as anybody who knows what that is. And so shortly thereafter, the following year, which even in that year, there was all the stuff going on with my confirmation class. So I was dealing with that on top of everything else regarding, so I was in a Catholic high school and going through Old Tenet Presbyterian Church confirmation. Yeah, that was, yeah. So I graduated and dealt with a bunch of whatever as far as that was concerned. And then in 1998, we moved from New Jersey to Illinois. And my biological mother thought that being on the cheerleading squad would somehow get me friends that were females, while my biological father thought that being on the cheerleading squad would translate to me not hanging out with males. I don't know how. Have no idea what Mike thought as far as the football team was concerned. Although, I guess depending upon viewpoints, most likely his thought process was, well, they're not really males. They might be biological males, but, compared to where I was born and raised and his thoughts in that reference, well, and it's not Chicago where I could actually fit in. And so, and for clarification, when I bring up that I could fit into Chicago, it's because I know how to be a decent human being. I also know how to keep to myself and not involve myself with somebody else's business. I also know better because that's a misunderstanding when it comes to various ethnic backgrounds in certain areas, whether it's the 5 boroughs and or Chicago and or other areas of, it doesn't matter what your skin tone is, so long as you don't do certain things. So my ex-sisters-in-law, they would purposefully go after males that were dating somebody else and, the ethnic background in reference to Fort Worth. In the 1980s, from what I was told, which, that's obviously, first and foremost, they were dating somebody else, and so that's common sense. Then there's a few other factors which made very little sense to me in regards of how difficult it really was. following the 10 Commandments, okay, you're not married. That doesn't change the fact that if they're dating somebody, they're dating somebody. That's it. It's just that simple. Common sense. So anyway, then again, I also couldn't date until after I turned 16 years old. And so I looked at it very differently in comparison. So I get moved with my biological sister to Illinois and start out by going and making friends by being on the cheerleading squad. Again, then there's that, which I did. I made friends with some of the females. And then there were the rest of them. And that is as that is. Then when it came to the football team, well, I couldn't date yet. So, there was, I could by the following school year, but I didn't want to date anybody in the same high school. Because the way I viewed it, if there was a breakup because it's high school, well, it seemed like there'd be drama. And so I didn't really want to deal with that. So that's why I was like, well, I could date somebody from another school so I don't have to deal with certain things. Well, I didn't realize how that was going to be because I dated a guy from Crystal Lake Central while attending Crystal Lake South. And so I thought people were more mature. I didn't realize difference, whatever it is it is. So that went the way that did. I also didn't think that any of the males on the football team were actually going to look at me in comparison to the other females on the cheerleading squad, and then what I learned about regarding the pommies. Although the irony is the pommies complained to the football team as well as the cheerleading squad because of how I had entered because I only had St. John Vianney High School cheerleaders to go off of because I didn't ever cheerlead before. So cheerleading in Crystal Lake South compared to pommies and just drama that I wasn't interested in. And then after football season and then the cafeteria table in reference to the Sadie Hawkins Day dance and Kenny and Leah and that. And then after that was basketball season, where I knew that my biological mother said I only had to be on the cheerleading squad for 1 year and I'd be good. So one day, for those who know, high school regulations, if you don't, I did. So I wore my cheerleading uniform. I had the bright green swishy pants. I had the swishy jacket, but I had it open, but I had my little skirt, whatever, with my little swishy pants underneath. I had my cheerleading shoes, whatever. And in front, for those who don't know where the strip is regarding in Crystal Lake South, I was in front of Colonial Cafe. Yeah, people said they knew how people are from New Jersey. So I stood outside because I did not want to be a cheerleader. I wanted to go into the military. I was still upset about Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. I was enraged because I hadn't gone to that. And so you can see that from myself earning 26 scuba diving certifications. I can hold a bit of a grudge. I am half Chinese, so maybe there's certain things regarding my biological mother that could think about that. And that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do it my way. I have work to do. And so, in front of Colonial Cafe, have the cheerleader skirt, got the swishy green pants, the matching jacket, and the cheerleader top, and I light up a cigarette with the shoes on. So anybody who's ever done that cheerleading stuff and knows how that is, I leaned up against the back of if I remember correctly, if I leaned up against the wall of the brick wall regarding Colonial Cafe, and it just so happened to be that somebody who had a Crystal Lake Central little bumper sticker well, you know, I was standing there talking with Melody, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, Melody, whatever. It is what it is. Yeah, you don't know. Because I really didn't want to be a cheerleader. No, because I'm not into, no. And so we're outside talking, and I'm standing, I don't care, and just is as it is. This female, she's a brunette, and she has bangs to here, longer hair, and she goes, excuse me, and tattletale number 1. Yes, how may I help you? I can totally be all cheerleader right now, mainly because I know how this is gonna go. And so are you from Crystal Lake South? Yeah, look, you know, I got my green little swishy pants, I got my little shoes. Here's my little skirt, whatever. See this CLS? Got my little jacket, my name right there. Hi. Would you like me to go get my pom-poms out of the car to prove it additionally? Melody is standing there going, yeah, we're cheerleaders, da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, what's your name? And da-da-da-da. And so Melody tells her, and I'm just like, yeah, no. I'm not going to be a cheerleader next season. I could actually cheer about that. And so I'm going to do what I want to do. It's going to be done my way, or it's going to be done my way. And if it's done my way, I'm in a great mood, okay? If it's done any other way, I'm not saying that I could be a brat. It just has to be done my way. I tend to know better a lot of the times, believe it or not. And so that Monday was called in to, I think it was Tina, the cheerleading coach, and she's like, Susan, I need to speak with you right now. Why? I don't think that you should be on the cheerleading squad next year. You do know, that's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. You're going to really have to think about this. This, mind you, was during football season, before basketball season, before the table situation. You are doing this, and you're doing this, and you're this, and you do know I didn't want to be on the cheerleading squad, and you're still only angry because I told the school the truth that you got second place out of 2 teams. You're a former Laker cheerleader, and you couldn't see what was wrong with the facts that you, as a former Laker cheerleader, couldn't get Crystal Lake South cheerleaders to do a better cheer. Instead, you want to try to blame me because of your failures when you say you were on the Laker cheerleading squad and you didn't see anything wrong with what you did. in reference to the actual cheer. So you're mad because of the fact that I told the truth after I was asked repeatedly, and I informed the school that, yeah, we got second place out of 2 teams, and what the score was of 6.9 for first place and 3.2 for second place. You, as a ex-Lakers cheerleader, which, to be quite honest, I don't even know how you could have ever been a Lakers cheerleader. It is as it is. Well, you're gonna, and she got all upset, and then, you know, the toilet paper with the tree situation, and it was as it was, because those who have met me probably don't have very much of a difficulty, although that was much more filtered compared to the words I actually used, because remember, I was straight out of New Jersey back then, and so it was 1998. I think it was October, and so it was as it was. It made her all sad and stuff like that, and I really didn't care. Really, it just didn't matter to me. So then fast forward through basketball season, and I was like, yay, I don't have to be the chick. So excited. So then I went to go support a friend of mine at the time, Valerie Morrison, because she was going to try out for the Robin Hood play, and I was like, fine, I can be there, whatever. Well, then, you know, David was like, oh, we have to have whatever as far as everybody has to try out, and I don't want to try out. He literally locked the doors until everybody tried out, which translated that I had to try out. I didn't even do anything that massively. It wasn't really known to the amount of plays that I had been in, and so I was given the lines as far as the script, and it was and so then later I became Maid Marian. Well, then there were the teachers. So again, I reiterate, people know how they've been. I did not have an understudy at all when it came to Maid Marian. There was no understudy. I was the one and only Maid Marian. And, you know, there were pommies that tried out, and then pommies had to make a dance for me while I was Maid Marian. And they didn't know I wasn't going to be on the cheerleading squad the next year. So it was as it was. And so Becky, who dated Shane, didn't know that I wasn't going to be on the cheerleading squad the following year. But she had to make a dance as far as that was concerned. But since the pommies had been doing the same dance each year for however many years, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, whoop-de-doo. Anyway, was as it was. And so then, just is as it is. So after, there was the newspaper for Crystal Lake South. And in comparison to the Broadway aspects and the Tony Awards situation, it was Crystal Lake South who was upset because I was upset that I was in Crystal Lake in comparison to Chicago. And they were upset because they didn't see how I couldn't recognize them in comparison because they would be out in certain areas. I hadn't seen so many people with such a light color skin tone in a small confined area between Crystal Lake, Cary Grove, Lake in the Hills, Springfield, Cook County, and Bull Valley, as well as Woodstock. I hadn't seen so many people with such a light skin tone in my life. and anybody who's been in New Jersey, it doesn't matter where you go to school, it doesn't matter where the demographic overall is, at some point in time you're going to see something other than this color. And so, you know, I could completely recognize a few people like that, especially compared to, I mean, like, can you see me compared to the rest of this? So, you know, it's pretty simple for me because I grew up with multiple ethnic backgrounds in comparison to just this. And so then they got offended because I couldn't, it's not that I couldn't see them, it was more along the lines of I mean, I can't be the only person who's gone from an area like the tri-state area, going up to the 5 boroughs, going to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. I mean, even Lancaster had some tannishness in their skin tone compared to, and then you got all of New Jersey. And then I go to Crystal Lake, Illinois. And then there's Palestine, Illinois, and Elgin, Illinois, and Schaumburg, Illinois. You know, not to be rude, if you're all the same height, I mean, to me, and this might be considered rude, fine. If they, you know, okay, different hairstyles, same skin tone. The opposite aspect of camouflage as far as a military uniform, where you got the military guys at the very minimum, you can distinguish their face. In comparison to the rest of the people out there, not all of them, just a lot of them. The majority of them, to be honest, unless I worked with them. So unless I actually worked with them, and I don't translate that to in school because that's not work, I translate that to IHOP, Milady's, Oldsmobile, Isuzu, Nissan, the Turtle X Car Wash, Holiday Inn, Andy's. Yeah, okay, that I can, you know, for the length of time of whatever, in comparison to changing classes every 35 to 40 minutes, in that comparison, and then going and being in a sea of blindingness. Compared to what I was born and raised around, because there was everything of every background. And so instead, they had not understood why I had the sensation I'd do better in Chicago compared to. And so there were a few issues. Well, anyway, after the situation regarding being made Marian, well, I dealt with the same sort of thing regarding the females as far as that was concerned. Then I dealt with all the other situations as per, and then there were the teachers. And the teachers in reference to, I cannot remember her name. She was a little around my height, but she had broader shoulders and lighter complexion, and she had these weird 1980s bangs. For those who know who my ex-brother-in-law, his second wife, Gail, what she looks as kind of a mixture with her eldest daughter, Amber, they kind of look like this female. I didn't even have her as a teacher, and she walks up to me and she just starts touching me. And it's like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, you're maid Marian. That doesn't translate to you being allowed to touch me. Back off. And, oh, you shouldn't have an attitude. Well, by that point in time, I've had however many reports against me for defending myself. Because in Crystal Lake South, between the cheerleader situation, as well as having been made Marian, on top of defending people, I had to defend myself. It was ridiculous the amount of times I had to actually, not literally the first day of school was the first time I had to defend myself. It went on until literally the substation police officer, as well as several other individuals, as far as the staff, had to actually intervene because of how bad it got because of those people in school. It started with the students being the way they were, and then because they'd go and tattletale, and then I literally was tattletaled on. Okay, fine, there was the cheerleader situation, that's fine. I got tattletaled on because a male had actually grabbed my thigh when I was wearing the cheerleading uniform, and I kicked his foot out from underneath him and then stuck my cheerleader sneaker on his throat and told him, "You don't do that." I didn't give you permission to do that. And he had his backpack on, so he was so he was like a semicircle. And then I took my, foot off his throat, and I said, well, I got tattletaled on for that. But the funny thing is he actually went to the substation police officer, and he had said, yeah, I grabbed her thigh, and then she had the nerve to kick my feet out from underneath me and defend herself. And the substation police officer was, then asked me, yes, I did do that. Yes, I defended myself. And that was it. It wasn't a problem, because as long as it justified and it wasn't overbearing, it was fine. And, and by overbearing, translating to the difference of, if I didn't stop in comparison. And so as long as I wasn't provoked, I didn't have to defend myself. It was very simple. It really was. As long as I wasn't provoked, as long as there wasn't any needless drama stirred up, I didn't have to defend myself. And that's pretty much the way it went. And so then after the Maid Marian situation, well, it became the time frame of February. And so where all of these females, such as the pommies and the cheerleaders, but not just them, all the different females who had boyfriends or whatever it was, oh, well, this, that, and the other. And so, I didn't really mind the Valentine's Day thing until the females started going, oh, Susan, did you get a carnation? I got a carnation from this person and this person and this person, and my mommy did this and my daddy did this, and I got this and I got that. Do you see any carnations in my hand? And they, no. Well, then you know the answer to that. Well, I got tattletaled on because I said that to a few females. Then some of the females that brought up that they had been given chocolates or whatever with similar situations. And it's like, you expect me to what? Other than congratulations that you got that, good for you. But instead, these females, they decided, oh, well, look, I got this from this one and this from this. Good for you. Good for you. Congratulations. All right. And by the time of the end of the day, I was so enraged and pissed off because of all of these females doing this garbage. It was one of those, get back and just do not annoy me, because you don't seem to understand what your type do. So you need to learn what your type do and accept responsibility for that sort of garbage that you've done. And so a lot of the females didn't see a problem, and it's like, and yet you are the way you are. You think that you have the right to make your whatever, fine, good for you. But not everybody has that. So instead of being disrespectful, do you think that you could not rub it in. So the whole, oh well, you know, you were Maid Marian, or you were this, and it's like that's something I earned, despite whatever the situation is. You were just given that. You didn't do anything to actually earn it. You didn't do this. So by I think it was 7th period, I popped off on a group of females that had a large bouquet of carnations and a bunch of chocolates, and I just pop, 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 pop. And then they were sad because I told them the truth, and it was, I'm not, don't be surprised. You stirred up needless drama, it is as it is. Well, this particular teacher had heard me go off on these females. And I think her name was Cliff or something like that, or maybe, I don't want to say Rat, because it's whatever her name was. And she got all whatever. This is the same teacher that was randomly touching me. And it's like, get away from me. Like, what, you know, if you're interested in that, you know, I know there's a couple of teachers, you can go to the gym class if that's what you're actually interested in. And you can get to stepping as far as that's concerned. I'm not interested in that. And I had a few things to additionally say for those who could pretty much envision that. And her excuse was, well, you know, you're Maid Marian. Well, so what? That doesn't translate to you being allowed to do that. That translates to that's what was at that point in time, this is now, so on and so forth. Step forward instead of progressing backwards. And so I had said a few additional things because it was multiple times throughout several, I think it was 2.5 months of this one female teacher doing this. And it was one of those, get back. Like, and she was offended because I didn't find it appealing as well as comfortable or appreciated any of that, and she just continued on, and there was a point where I actually popped off. And I know that might not be a surprise. And because she was as she was, I was like, you know what, I don't even know why you're doing this or why you're doing that. If you were to, because she tried bringing up how I didn't have a boyfriend as her so-called excuse. And it was, that is not acceptable. You know, if you were to ever have a boyfriend, a husband, or whatever, I'm sure he'd drop to his knees to actually speak with someone who actually would speak with him in comparison to speaking at him the way you do. If this is how you were to be with anybody other than high school students, I promise you, if you ever get a man, I promise he will drop to his knees to a female who actually speaks with him compared to the way you speak at me. So you can get to step in because I don't have time for your type. And she got all, you know, whatever. And it was one of those, I didn't care. Well, then I dealt with a few other situations. And it was one of those, I don't have patience for this. I don't care about these particular factors. I was already doing what I could to work to get out of the area so that way I could go take care of what I knew I needed to take care of. I already had my nightmare when I was in 2nd grade, so I was capable to do some things. I didn't graduate basic training though, but I did what I could. So in reference to that particular factor, which I'm going to acknowledge that in this particular official YouTube video of mine before going on. So I know for a fact that, and this is after certain amounts of research, not more recently, it would be around the time frame starting in 2009 or 2010, mainly 2009. in a different capacity. So yeah, I earned 26 scuba diving certifications, and I've gone over a few factors as to some portions of my work. So it is known that there is a certain time delay when it comes to live news on certain channels in comparison. And so those who know about my nightmare and what I made attempts to do to assist preventing problems so that way life could be. So from what research and information I could get, the first tower was struck at 6:45 in the time zone of the East Coast. Because the East Coast, the sun rises earlier. Obviously, that's why you have time zone differences. If you look at, there has to be some form of a map where you could see what length of time the actual sunrise is per day. So then what would be considered 9:45 in the East Coast area regarding the second airplane, and if you look at the footage that's available, those who know that viewpoint would be capable to distinguish the difference as to the time. If you take in consideration the 9/11 documentary by the two French film photographers, they do go over some of the timestamps, but not all of them. And so in those references, the research that I could accomplish, that I have made attempts to explain where I could, I didn't know how to bring it forward. I already was dealing with what I was dealing with. By that time, it was as it was. And so I didn't remember certain things because of the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And in comparison to certain viewpoints, again, I didn't want to be involved with certain things. I wanted to make the decisions for myself. I could work with people, but that requires discussions with me instead. And so, yes, in 2009, there's where I was carried on stage, similarly to the tryouts that I didn't want to be a part of in reference to Maid Marian. And yes, there were the modeling aspects that I had worked on in different capacities in some ways, mainly because the situations regarding my scuba diving wasn't being taken seriously at the time. If it had been taken seriously, I knew that I would have been spoken with in comparison. But since I wasn't spoken with, even though I made multiple attempts throughout the time frame of, anybody who knew me in what's supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, whether in the BDSM areas, the LGBTQP areas, and or the swinger areas, if I spoke with you about scuba diving, then I spoke with you about the poofy fish situation. Maybe you remember it, maybe, I don't know, whatever, but I brought it up in attempts to take care of situations as best as I actually could. And for as many who complained about how I was repetitive and so on and so forth, well, again, in reference to people speaking with me in truth, if you just spoke with me in truth instead of whatever hypotheticals, maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have had to repeat myself. So there's a difference regarding my official YouTube videos. Please do subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube video. And if you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. And go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, also known as www.ladydoribell.com. Well, if I didn't have to re-explain myself similar to each official YouTube video per time I spoke with someone who had complained, if they had actually just been honest in person, face-to-face in person, in comparison, I hypothetically wouldn't have had to repeat myself as much. So people who I had volunteered with on a consistent basis when I was at Sapphire, I probably didn't have to repeat myself regarding the after effects of my head injury. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, I don't know. I didn't keep track. However, maybe, just maybe, if people had actually been truthful with me, you know, after having woken up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, in comparison to the situations that I hypothetically dealt with, if there's the proof of that, then maybe there would be the proof that there's actual humanity during that time frame regarding the people I once knew in person, face-to-face in person, during that time frame, if I'm accurate. Now, of course, there could be those who did not know and whatever capacities of, but I wouldn't know. Those choices are what those choices were. And so those particular factors, where in comparison to whatever assumptions, that's whatever assumptions. And so I don't know if individuals hypothetically had issues regarding whether in reference to me being at the 10-year reunion or me not being there. It really doesn't matter, to be honest, because I wasn't really interested in going anyway. So if it was regarding what occurred wrongfully to my daughter and my son and I as a family, if it was because people thought that I would be whatever assumption of, well, whatever the actualities of are, or whatever the actualities of are. If, ironically, it was because I wasn't wanted at the reunion, well, I wasn't going to go anyway. I just didn't have a reason to. Especially after all the stuff that I had dealt with from 1998 in the April or May time frame of, through to the time frame of January when I graduated. There's a few people I got along with, I don't deny that, but because I didn't remember, I didn't want to deal with what I was already dealing with in Texas, because that was already far too much as it was. So while some people have whatever opinion regarding whatever accountability that they need to take and accept for their stupidity because of their responsibility for their own particular choices, that's exactly that. So whatever connected portion of, instead. So, while some people might have, probably especially celebrities of whatever type, in whatever capacity, understand, because of what they themselves know, whether in reference to the comparison of my biological mother and or biological father and or biological sister and or relatives of and or whatever church and or whatever school and or whatever location regarding, from my childhood into my teenage years and, the high school, stuff like that. And then the situations thereafter, well, it's the facts. And so when people go and make choices to keep themselves and their children safe, there are reasons for that because they have the right to. It shouldn't matter if you're a celebrity or not. It realistically shouldn't. It's called being a human being. So in reference to the hypotheticals of whatever capacity, which does include whether in reference to my modeling and or my scuba diving, I'm the one and only person to speak with about my work and no one else. So while I know I took pictures of my son, my daughter, and my niece when in Florida, they didn't go scuba diving with me. Are you capable to distinguish the difference between snorkel gear and actual scuba diving gear? Because if you can't tell the difference between snorkeling gear and actual scuba diving gear, there's a huge difference. Those who wouldn't be capable to know the difference, that's on them. Though it should be fairly simple to distinguish. And so yes, I took my son, my daughter, and my niece on a dolphin excursion in comparison to when I went scuba diving. So it would be backwards if DIFUS or CPS had ever gotten involved in comparison, yet again, to just asking me. Because obviously, common sense would dictate that. That would also be important if my biological mother and biological father and biological sister and ex-in-laws had actually told the truth. In comparison, so if my ex-in-laws decided to stir up needless drama in the state of Texas after my scuba diving, let me make this clear. My ex-in-laws in Georgia, I didn't ever know them the way they thought. So I didn't know them in person, face-to-face in person, most likely similarly to how certain people may have portrayed. So there are those in Texas who know how that name-dropping issue was just one time. If my ex-in-laws had done that a whole bunch of times in reference to David and Mary Osteen with Sandra and Ariel Osteen at the time frames of, we weren't close. I wasn't interested at all. And while, yes, I didn't hide being in the lifestyle, I wasn't interested because of the facts. I have a particular viewpoint when it comes to, so I have the capability of being in the lifestyle and having the capacity of discussions, because I'm not whatever some people view as the stereotype to the lifestyle. So if you go to my website, www.susanmeling.com, also known as www.ladydorybell.com, and you go to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, there are a few journal blogs that I've gone over my actual truthful numbers, especially since officially. So those assumptions, in comparison to hypothetical aspects. So, if some people have other viewpoints or opinions or whatever they might think, well, is it from before my head injury or after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000? If it's before my head injury compared to after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, well, obviously, physically, you can distinguish certain things since I began my hair and my tattoos. I know for a fact that I couldn't be the only person up until my hair, as far as who was a brunette in the state of Texas or Illinois or New Jersey and various other states regarding Ohio and Indiana and Iowa. Similarly, I can't be the only brunette to brown eyes, and additionally, there's probably a few other factors such as my skin tone. I know I can't be the only person who are in various areas with my particular skin tone. So I also have a biological little sister, and so there might be some other capacities to take in consideration and or etc. So if there's any clarifications because of how some high school males have been, this is another reason why the 10 Commandments are important. Especially if you actually have some semblance of some sort of whatever regarding a female and or male, depending on what you're into, because that's important to take in consideration. The truth actually does matter. Always has. So thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to like my official YouTube videos and share the link to my official YouTube videos. If you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. Go to my website, www.susanmeling.com, also known as www.ladydorybell.com. Today is the 24th of May, 2022.